Okay, what we have going on here is Unit 8, Lecture 3 for AP and dual credit, while simultaneously, this is Lecture 8 for Unit 6 for on-level psychology. This is taking a look at psychosis, which includes disorders like schizophrenia, somatoform disorders, dissociative disorders as well, and excuse me. We'll also take a look at personality disorders as well in this little TD. All right, so let's start off with talking about what is a psychosis. When someone is psychosis, psychotic, whatever. This is a loss. Hang on. Excuse me. Bless you. I just blessed myself. So I am in no way encouraging nor discouraging religion with that statement. It's kind of a habit. Kind of a habit. All right, so a psychotic disorder marked by irrational and lost contact with reality. Okay, so there is the real world that most of us see and we go through and everything else, but someone with a psychosis isn't experiencing it the same way. Again, they're seeing color a little bit different. They're hearing voices that other people aren't. This is what's referred to as a split personality. And not necessarily, we're not talking split as in you have multiple. We're talking split in a way of my perception of the world is split from yours. We're not sort of experiencing the same place. Impacts about 4% of the US population. You tend to act more withdrawn. You feel a disconnect from society as a whole. How can I hear that, but you don't hear that? How can I see that, but you don't see that? A way you could sort of understand this, maybe, and I just thought of this, we think differently. If you're a liberal person, sometimes listening to a conservative speak and what they believe, or if you're a conservative person, listening to someone who's liberal and what they believe, and sort of how can you be living in the same world? How could you hear that person say this and you assumed it was, and how can you, and we're all normally healthy people. And we're hearing the same words, but we just have, so the sensation is the same, we just have a different perception. Somebody with a psychosis, they're getting different sensations. So it's not like there's a choice of a perception or a learned perception. They're actually, again, hearing things, smelling things, tasting things, touching things, seeing things that other people aren't. So again, it's hard to deal with the world because if everybody else is experiencing a different world, I don't want to be reminded of how different I am, or because my world is my normal, and you only feel abnormal when you're surrounded by others. So again, some other stuff here with psychosis. Again, not a choice. These are some quotes of people with psychosis. People and things randomly become scary. Seeing faces, hearing voices. Sometimes it sounds like a leaky pipe. Your feelings went away. Betrayal, terrorizing, noisy, lonely, frustrating. All these things. Some other things there for people with a life with psychosis. Feel free to pause there and move through that. Let's start with the most well-known, which is schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is it's a disordered thinking, often demonstrated through delusions or hallucinations or things such as that. Schizophrenics do not have split personalities. They have a split mind from reality. What you're experiencing, what I'm experiencing, they're not necessarily experiencing. And the depression's the common cold, is the cancer. 1% of the population, 70 million people worldwide, tends to strike people as young adults. 10% of the time it's past 40. Men and women at the same rates. If it's in your family, more likely to have it. I have a friend, his name's Todd. We call him Mookie. Named after center fielder for the Mets back in the 70s and 80s. But Mookie is schizophrenic. And being a schizophrenic, he hears things and sees things, especially when he's on his medication, that other people don't necessarily pick up. He has this feeling of self-importance that is greater than what it is. And then, trust me, a lot of people have that. I got to get on the internet. I have to post my status because everyone depends on, I'm inspiring. A lot of us have illusions of grandeur, but Mook's it's based in his reality. There's his world, then there's the rest of the world, and he sort of sees things a little bit different. this is right here because somebody pointed out to me when I was going over this last spring, that this illusion where this seems like it's coming towards you, but it's really going away from you. That's uh, schizophrenics can't sort of make that out. And I'm not quite sure why, but she pointed that out to me and I read about it. And it's true. So again, two main things with schizophrenics. First off is hallucinations. And hallucinations are you're getting perceptions that not everybody else is getting. And again, this is part of that split from reality. You hear things, auditory being the most common. You're hearing things other people aren't hearing, occasionally seeing things other people aren't seeing, feeling things, smelling, tasting things that are not there. No one born blind has ever developed schizophrenia, interestingly enough, uh, because of that sense of vision, never there. Yet, if you became blind later, it is still possible. Uh, so again, making statements, doing all these things, and again, we all hear voices. We all see things that aren't there. And I know a lot of you guys are saying to yourself, I don't hear voices. That's your voice. That's your voice. You know, your inner voice, your inner monologue, your inner dialogue, where you're just sitting there getting lost in your thoughts. That's an inner voice. You know, when you close your eyes and dream, or even just sit there and just imagine something else happening, that's seeing visions. You know, imagining tasting a Big Mac and that there's the taste of a Big Mac, and you're imagining that taste. We all have that. But the difference with someone who's schizophrenic is they don't know that that's not real. They don't know that that's coming from their imagination. They assume it's coming from the outside world. That's the split. That's the big split. And then on the other side of the equation is the delusions. And the delusions basically fall into the category of where you fall in society and what your relationship with society is. And again, this has no basis in realities. Delusions of persecution. Everyone's out to get me. The government is listening to every conversation I have. You know, and again, people who think that the government's listening to every conversation that they have, you know how many people that would take? You think the government really wants to sit there and read your text messages? I think Jimmy's cute. I think he's got ugly cute. They're not keeping track of that. All right. No one's reading that. But so we all have paranoia. But for someone who's schizophrenic, it's this constant feel of always being persecuted. Everyone out to get me. And so it also becomes very difficult to trust someone because can I trust you? Are you part of the problem and everything else? You know, everything's around every corner. Delusions of grandeur. You're more important than what you really are. And again, folks, we all think we're important. We are the stars of our lives. But the person with schizophrenia thinks that they are more important to the world than what they really are on a much grander scale. You know, when you have the homeless person downtown who says that he's Jesus Christ, odds are schizophrenia is somewhat involved, or maybe he actually is, who knows. But that's sort of where it's coming from. Difficulty clearing your working memory from distraction and things like that. So you're feeling you're persecuted, you're feeling you're really important, and all these other things. Again, my friend Todd, who's schizophrenic, and it hit him in his early 20s, throughout his 20s, and I was about 5 years younger than him. So we played basketball at the rec center together, and I would come back from college over Christmas, and he started to check out. He was always this great guy, great outside shot, had these green Chuck Taylors on, shot like Larry Bird, a little kind of mullet like Bird too. But when each time I came back and visited, he just seemed a little off, and I guess something happened. He was put in a place for a while and came back and was on medication. And there was one time I thought everything was fine. There was one time he wasn't on his medication, and we were talking. We're in someone's backyard, fire pit or whatever, and it was just me and Todd for some reason. And Todd goes, "Well, you know, that I'm a god." I go, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." And I knew that Todd was schizophrenic, and I knew that. And again, and this wasn't me mocking him or mimicking him in any way. And I just sort of sat back and I go, "Tell me more about that, Todd." And he started to tell me about it. And again, he didn't claim he was the God and all controlling. He didn't claim he was Jesus, but he was in some sort of of hierarchy of it. And he told me, and then I started to challenge him with questions, you know, not aggressively, how could you dare say that? But it was like, so then why here? Why are you this? And who else is involved? And all these, and every question I asked him, he came back with an answer that was so well thought out, so primed to defend any arguments. It was so real that by, you know, the sun's coming up by the time this conversation was over. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, I'd start a cult for this guy. You know, I just really, and not that I truly believed him, and I'm not mocking him in any way, but he wasn't faking it. You know, it's truly the way he saw the world. It's truly what he believed. It was truly his status, his place in the world, according to his mind, was that. And it wasn't just for attention or something, or let me tell some lies. It was his truth. It was his belief. It was his facts. And it was a fascinating evening, and it was really interesting the way that he could just sort of lay it all out like that. It was a fascinating evening. And again, he's a great guy. I see Mook about once a year, Christmas. There's a Christmas party, and I'll run across him. He's a good guy. But as long as he's on his medication, man, he gets off his medication, he's really very paranoid. But if he's on it, you can't tell. But then that's the other trick with someone with schizophrenia, is if you're so convinced that your actions are in fact right, why would I need medication? And also, who's giving me this medication? Are you trying to control me? When you get that paranoia in you. So that's one of the bigger challenges, again, with any sort of disorder, is getting someone to take their medication. Somebody with anxiety, if one will calm me down a little, two will calm me down a lot, you know, that becomes tricky. Inappropriate emotions and actions for people who are schizophrenic, crying while others are laughing. Sometimes no feeling, a flat affect, catatonic state. You're just there and you're motionless for hours. It can rock back and forth because you're living in your own world, because your inner world makes sense. But once you try to communicate to the outer world doesn't quite mesh with your inner world. You get positive and negative symptoms. And by the way, I'm not saying good symptoms, bad symptoms, and positive and negative. I'm saying positive in addition to negative taken away from. So positive symptoms could be you talk a lot. Again, hallucinations, seeing things others aren't. Delusional talk, inappropriate laughter, tears, rage, things you're expressing. Or negative symptoms where you're more withdrawn. Tone is removed from your voice. No expression in your face, muted. So again, there's all these different types of schizophrenia. There's chronic, where it slowly develops over time, acute, where it develops rapidly. And the good news about that, if it shows up rapidly, it can go away rapidly. Then there's the paranoid, there's catatonic, disorganized, undifferentiated, residual. All of these are different forms of schizophrenia. So just like with depression, just like with anxiety, just like with anything, vision, you know, there's a little bit nearsighted and really nearsighted, a little bit farsighted and really, there's people with the thin glasses and the thick glasses. It's a same color blindness, all these. It's the same thing with depression. There are different levels of depression. There's different levels of anxiety. There's real paranoid anxiety, and there's just sort of I got a little bit of that anxiety. There's different levels of schizophrenia, and there's different types of schizophrenia. So we always have to watch about painting it with a broad brush. Other things on schizophrenia are right there. The disorder, again, the brain anatomy, not a lot going on in the frontal lobe, a lot going on back here in your occipital lobe and your temporal lobe, sort of hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, as opposed to a normal brain. Could be caused by low birth weight, birth complications. There was a study of some Dutch people who were facing famine during World War II, and then some of these mothers were pregnant. And then after these babies were born in the late 40s, early 50s, they noticed that the number of people diagnosed with schizophrenia in Holland went way, way up. Dopamine overactivity, because you're hearing things, alert things, extra energy, all these things. So again, you want to take medication. It's going to block a lot of those dopamine receptors. But then when you block the dopamine receptors, it's also blocking pleasure from your life as well. Hard to explain overreaction to internal, external stimuli. if stimulating drugs such as LSD and cocaine can cause these hallucinations. Is that part of it? Is it a chemical imbalance? Is it psychological? Is it environment? It could be a lot of things. It could be, you know, I'm a kid and I tried to trust and I couldn't trust. So then I just learned my own little inner world. Uh, all of us had imaginary friends growing up. Well, maybe not all of us, but you know, depending, you know, how many other children are in your family versus are you an only child? Does being an only child make you a little bit more? All these are questions that they ask about. Again, 1 in 100 that you're going to have it at all. 1 in 25 if it's somewhere in your family tree. 1 in 10 if it's in your immediate family. 1 in 6 fraternal. 1 in 2 amongst identicals, even if raised separately. So again, that's the tricky thing with environment. 6 in 10 if they shared the same placenta, 1 in 10 if they do not. So again, that first 9 months environment, so all those different levels of hormones that you're getting at that site. And again, environmental things. If you're born in an urban area, separation from parents, poor relations from parents, a lot of time alone, less exposure to others, excessive drug use because you get used to those hallucinations and whatever, and they become a normal part of your life. Those things can impact schizophrenia as well. So it's a little bit more reading on schizophrenia right there for you. Schizoaffective disorder, cantata, delusional disorder as well, which is part of schizophrenia, also in there. Okay, now continuing on, more stuff on schizophrenia. You can pause there. Dissociative disorders. All right. Now, this is characterized by trying, again, there's the reality of the world. This is a psychosis. There's reality of the world, and you're separating your reality. So this is a disconnection between your thoughts, your identity, consciousness, and all these things. And this can impact all age groups. A lot of times it involves memory loss, repression of memories, disconnections from people or whatever. And a lot of times you do it because those particular things that you're disconnecting from can seem dangerous to you. So you make a disconnect. Again, if someone shows psychological signs of terror, distress for no apparent reason, it may be caused by subconscious. There could be an earlier traumatic incident, so you try to disassociate from that. A couple of examples of this: psychogenetic amnesia. This could be something bad happened to you, so I'm repressing that. I don't want to think about it unless it comes back with PTSD, but it's very selective forgetting. It's not amnesia where just all your thoughts are forgotten. It's a certain time and it's certain things during that time. You only retain general knowledge. It's the guy who is discovered, you know, he's been missing for 20 years and he's discovered in Colorado Springs, married with kids, you know, but he had a family with children in Houston. What's he doing in Colorado Springs? And you know, how did he, well, I don't remember having that family. Really? But you still know how to drive, you still know how to practice law. So the only things that are forgotten are things that are dangerous to you. And again, that's psychogenetic quag, where you combine this forgetting with flight and getting away from something. And again, you tend to forget the things that are harmful and only remember the things that are beneficial. And a lot of the things that we remember, again, are procedural things where the connections are really, really tight. You know, how to walk, how to drive, you know, just things I've done again and again and again. Whereas the things that tend to be more repressed or forgotten are episodes of our life, you know, those specific things that have happened throughout. So again, there's some stuff on dissociative amnesia, delirium as well. Here's the one that gets a lot of attention, gets a lot of play, although incredibly rare. And it's called multiple dissociative identity disorder, okay? Where an individual person has many different personalities. Again, we all have many personalities. You know, we all have many personas, and we talk about this with Freud. You know, there's the persona of me as a teacher and what I'm doing right here. This is not the way I talk to my wife. This is not the way I talk to my children. This is not the way I talk to my friends. I don't go, hey, I got a Zoom call. Let's all get on Friends and let me put up a PowerPoint and lead you. I don't do that with them. All right. But no matter what, I'm still 52. And I'm still a guy. And I'm still at this point in my life, despite all those different sort of personas. Multiple dissociative identity disorder is where you have many different unique personalities. That as a guy, they may not all be guys. It could be a woman. They're not all the same age. There are different sort of characteristics. Here's where it becomes tricky. There were 8 total reported cases of this between the years 1930 and 1960. 1980s, the movie Civil comes out, and suddenly there's 20,000 cases in the United States. Again, if you look at this chart here, from 1874 to 1920, there were 28. 1921 to 70, 8. And then suddenly, from 71 to 88, 300 throughout the world, and 20,000 in the United States alone. So, is this truly a disease, or does it just make a great movie? Because it does make an amazing movie. Or is it someone using a defense? It wasn't me, that was Bob that did that. You know, and a lot of people who have sort of prejudices against the idea of this it's just somebody looking to blame someone else. You know, we all have an inner child doing stupid, silly little things, but that's not a unique personality. Because here's the other trick. Let's say I'm a 52-year-old man and I've got multiple dissociative identity disorder, and occasionally a 14-year-old little girl takes over named Sally. Well, when I turn 53, won't she turn 15? I mean, if she's truly part of my personality, won't she evolve and develop as well? You know, or if one of my personalities is a 83-year-old Jewish man named Saul, well, does that mean that when I was born as a little baby, shouldn't he have been already in his 30s? So it really sort of becomes a tricky thing. Or is this a lot of people going, oh, I didn't do it, Tommy did it? Well, then you and Tommy need to go to jail. So, and a lot of times this is a defense that's used as sort of, oh, he's not responsible for his actions because he has this other personality, and a doctor comes forward. And I look at this, and for the years that I've studied psychology, I just go, this is just crap. There's no, come on. Until I read this one study. This one study was fascinating. There's Germany. Let's say it's in Germany. But there's this person in Germany who claimed to have multiple personalities. Multiple. And I go, okay, yeah, whatever. Tell me more about this. And with his multiple personalities, what they did was they put him up to a PET scan. And they wanted to see the activity going on in his brain. And his brain would light up according to activities, his hear things, his temporal lobe, all that kind of thing, watch his frontal lobes active. And they asked to talk to different personalities. Let's say the guy's name is Dave. And Dave claimed that one of his personalities was in fact blind. Let's say that guy's name is Steve. All right. So they go, okay, Dave. They talk to Dave, and Dave's whole brain is lighting up, whatever. And you see this, yeah, I see that. And then they go, all right, now let's talk to Steve. Let's talk to your blind personality. Okay. And then you go, okay, all right, it's Steve. And now how are they going to test whether or not Steve's blind? What are they going to say? Here, can you see this? No, I can't see it. Here's the fascinating thing. Hooked up to the PET scan, his occipital lobe went dark. Nothing going on. You can't turn off your occipital lobe. But this guy, all activity that had to do with vision, shut off. But only when this personality took over. I don't know. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. So there's some more stuff on dissociative identity disorder if you'd like to look at it, some possible causes for it. Somatoform disorder. This is the somatic nervous system, which controls voluntary muscle movement, what I can do with my arms, what I can pick up, all these things. Somatoform disorders are when I suddenly feel things that aren't there, or I lose sort of control of my body. This is not to be confused with hypochondriac. A hypochondriac is someone who feels no illness that's not there. But this is someone who's suddenly feeling a pain, even though there's no medical reason for that pain. I can't move my arm, even though your arm is 100% healthy. And you know that you're not paralyzed, when you see the muscles and the nerves moving. You just psychologically, you can't move it. And a lot of reasons for somatoform disorders are what are called conversion disorders, where you lose a particular ability. Now, to explain this from a psychodynamic perspective, it's this. Let's say that I was going through a divorce, or whatever the case may be. I always use that as an example, even though there's no one happier in their marriage than my wife and I. But let's say that suddenly her and I wanted to go through divorce, and I was devastated by that. So suddenly I bandage up my knee and I come in on crutches and I walk into the classroom. First thing everybody's going to ask me in the classroom is, what's wrong with your knee? What's going on with your knee? No one's going to ask me about my bad marriage. They're all going to ask me about my knee. And I can take care of my knee and I can make my knee better. That's something I can control. So a lot of times what will happen is someone will make up an illness because they feel like they have control over the illness and because they can't control other things going on. And that's why when you see somatoform, when someone says they're sick and it's called psychosomatic, it's because it's the idea that I can take care of this particular thing, or let me displace my issues onto this particular thing because that's what's getting attention and I like that attention. Behaviorists, I'll displace my problems on this imaginary thing. And again, it could really feel real. The pain could really feel real, but again, we're the ones responsible for making pain signals. Personality disorders. Here's a trick. You got to know the difference between saying this is someone's personality trait and this is a personality disorder. If you've got any social media account, you're a narcissist. You've got narcissism in you because you think what you write on social media is important and everything else. And you also have a very dependable personality because you're dependent on how other people are going to react to it. You also have a little bit of a need to display yourself to everyone and be a little bit of a, borderline, look at, changing what your status is all the time. You've got all those traits, but it doesn't mean you have a disorder. It's a disorder if it gets in the way of your day-to-day life. Okay, if it doesn't get in the way of your day-to-day life, you're a little bit of a narcissist. The selfie inherently isn't anybody that you see doing this and sort of there's narcissism there. But we can't say that everyone's got a disorder because there's a bit of normalcy to that, and it doesn't get in the way of people's lives. It actually enables them to make their social media account and attract other people and whatever. It's a functioning of their lives. So just because you're acting in a way doesn't mean that you're something, okay? It doesn't mean that you're something. So keep that in mind. There's a difference between having a personality trait and a psychological disorder, all right? So with that in mind, let's take a look at paranoid people. High levels of suspiciousness, motives and intentions of others, of the motives and intentions of others without the delusions associated with schizophrenia. Remember we talked about schizophrenics had that paranoia. Everyone's out to get me. And again, someone who, you can have trouble trusting people. You got to have a bad relationship and you want to be careful and you're a little bit paranoid about new relationships, but it doesn't mean that you have a paranoia disorder because you're still going on dates, even though you may be unsure of it, you're willing to try a new one and everything else. Now, if suddenly you go, I can't get in another relationship because people just lie, that's when it's starting to become a disorder because it's getting in the way of your life. Schizoid means you're aloof and distant from others, very blunt with your emotions, eccentric behavior, socially disengaged from a lot of people. Well, that's just someone who speaks their mind. An 8-year-old that walks up to you, you're ugly, I want this, or a 3-year-old, feed me now. Well, look at it, he's a little schizoid. No, he's not. That's how a 3-year-old acts. I want to do it myself. That's how they act. The little girl that wants to put on all her mom's makeup. That's just this being a 3-year-old. But if it gets in the way of your life, it gets in the way of your relationships and everything else, that's when it starts becoming a disorder. Avoidant. I want to avoid relationships because I'm afraid of rejection. Again, all of us can be a little bit wary of relationships because relationships take work. I got to call these people. I got to see how they are. I got to ask them if they want to do something in order for them to ask me, and it becomes codependent. So some of us will just go, I don't want to get involved in it. Or, somebody dies. I don't want to become close to someone because they'll die. I don't want to get a dog because they'll die. Well, if it starts getting in the way of your life like that, now it becomes a problem. Histrionic, dramatic, emotional behavior, excessive demands to be the center of attention, excessive needs for praise and approval. And again, we could say everybody on social media is histrionic. We could say anybody who's ever walked on stage in the theater, they've got a histrionic disorder. No, they just want to be the center of attention. Dramatic emotional behavior. And again, this really kind of explains a lot of teens. It doesn't mean, the need for praise and approval. Will you like my status? Put your status out. Will you like my status? It's a trait. Social media doesn't mean it's a disorder. All right, it's a disorder if I put my status there and I'm hitting refresh, 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 and I can't sleep until I get at least 13 likes. And now it's getting in the way of your sleep. Now it's getting in the way of other things. You know, I can't call my friends because I'm waiting on these strangers to approve of me. I need to have 5,000 friends, not 500. I need 5,000. What can I do? What kind of videos can I get more followers? Now it's getting in the way of your life. Dependent, pattern of excessive dependence on others, difficulty in making your own decisions. Well, hell, that's every newborn I've ever met. Can't make his own decision, hold his own head up, need someone else to change him and feed him. Little dependent personality disorder? No, it's being a newborn. All right. And a lot of us want others to help us out with decisions because we're afraid of making decisions. You know, you decide, you choose, because I don't want to choose, because what if I choose a bad thing and you don't like it? You know, what if I take this class? Because a lot of times it's because we want someone else to blame. When something goes bad, I want someone else to blame. If I choose, then it's my fault. You know, so a dependent personality disorder is I can't decide what classes I take until my friends call me back. You know, now it's getting in the way of your day-to-day life. You know, I can't leave my parents. I can't move out of the house because I don't think I can do it on my own. Now it's becoming a bit of a disorder. Narcissism, again, grandiose self-image, excessive need for admiration, exaggerated sense of self-importance, aided by these successful fantasies. 6.2% of the population and rising. 50% more likely in men. More common in those that are unmarried, separated, or divorced. I mean, when you got children, man, you're not allowed to be a narcissist. More common when you're younger, because it's all about you and developing your own identity and everything else like that. And again, you think you're important, and you are. To you, you're the most important person in the world. Because suddenly, as we talked about before, when you become a teenager, you're being told you can't be dependent anymore. What are you going to be for the rest of your life, and all these other things? So then you're told you're important, you're special, you're these amazing things. I'm special, and you believe that, and you believe that you're more special than others, and it's never going to affect me, and I am destined for whatever. That's narcissism. And again, it, it's a disorder when you start to become aggressive or violent or manipulative because other people aren't recognizing you. You're not seeing my importance. What's wrong with you? Da 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 da. And again, we all have importance, but it's important to us. And it's important to others in our lives. But again, this idea that I got to compete, I got to get on YouTube, I got to get the likes and all these other things. When it gets in the way of your day-to-day life, it's a disorder. Borderline, failure to develop a stable self-image together with a pattern of tumultuous moods, stormy relationships with others, along with a lack of impulse control. Boy, if that's not every teenager I've ever met. But that's just a characteristic of being a teen. All right. Unstable sense of yourself because you're still trying to figure out who you are. You know, a distorted self-image because you're letting it be created by others and through the approval of others. Stormy relationships because you're just learning what relationships are. You know, moody, yes, because I'm getting all these new hormones. So for a teenager, this is fine. But for that 45-year-old that suddenly comes home one day and says, I got to get out of here. I need to divorce you. I need to go move to Hawaii. That's the person with the problem. And again, you could have one of these. You could have many of these all combined. And when it gets in the way of your day-to-day life, that's when it becomes a problem. All right. A little spectrum of personality disorders right there. All right. There we go. Borderline personality disorder. Let's talk about this one. Antisocial. Antisocial personality disorder. This is a person who exhibits a lack of consciousness for wrongdoing. Yeah, I did it. Whatever. And little empathy. No empathy in this person's life. Cannot see things through someone else's eyes. Doesn't care. Doesn't want to. Doesn't need to. Even if it's towards friends, even if it's towards family, they'll become aggressive. They'll become ruthless because it's all about them. It is the king of the mountain. They're unable to keep a job because of constant lies that catch up with them. This is a normal person. A lot of frontal lobe activity. Oh, if I do this, what would others think? The murderer, sociopath, whatever. I killed him. He's bothering me. He's dead now. Whatever. I'm not thinking, hey, he's got he's a father of kids. I've just taken away a father. What about them? I just taken away someone's husband. What about them? They don't see that. It's just, yeah, he's dead, whatever, killed him. You know, this is the guy that will steal your girlfriend and then invite you to the wedding. So, well, you know, why would you invite me to the wedding? Wait, you should, that's fine. Should have kept her. Gonna keep her? The hell? Grow up. Buy me a toaster. Show up. You know, not all criminals fit this label. Not all criminals fit this label because most criminals, you commit a crime, you don't do it anymore because you got busted for it. You know, you get in trouble, you go to jail, you get punished. Most of us, after we get punished, we're like, wow, that really sucked, and we never do it again. Yet 5 to 6 offenders commit 50 to 60% of all crimes, all crimes. 2014, total cost of all violent crime committed, robberies, burglaries, etc. All crimes committed in the year 2014, if you added them all up, $18 billion. And we look at that behavior and we're ashamed of that behavior. And we go, how dare you do that? How dare you not think of this person who you robbed? What about that store owner? What about that place you looted and you broke into the glass, broke through the glass and took the things, and they can't send their kids to college and everything else. And we hate that, and we see that, and we say, how dare they? Which is a very rational way to think. How dare they do that? Because we can see the violence and everything else, and we feel empathetic. Yet, 2014, the total cost of all white collar crime, tax fraud, insider trading, manipulating of stock prices, Ponzi schemes, all of this. 2014, total cost of that, $300 billion. And we celebrate that. Oh yeah, but look at how he got there. Yeah, sure. And look at what he did. And we celebrate that wealth. And there's actually an envy there. Well, he just outsmarted him. He outsmarted him. You were dumb to give him your money. And we rationalize that antisocial personality disorder, white collar crime. And it's called white collar because it's business crime. You wear the white shirt, as opposed to violent crime, what's called blue collar crime, where you're more likely to work with your hands and you got to wash your hands off. $300 billion. But these are people who get punished less, more likely to plea bargain, more likely to serve their sentence from their house or a very fancy jail, because we kind of admire, oh, they're nonviolent. $300 billion versus $18 billion. Think of how many IRAs you just got rid of, how many people's savings are gone. And yes, maybe you didn't, maybe that wasn't a violent act in itself, but what it leads to these people is suddenly I'm homeless, suddenly I don't have any money, suddenly I may have to turn to violence, or I become an alcoholic and become abusive in my relationship. What it leads to, but we celebrate the white collar crime. Oh man, oh, he was living large for a while. Oh, it was all worth it. Lived up high for a while. And the violent crime we look down on. We look down on. Okay, less activity again in the frontal lobe. Two types of, another part, a great example of someone with antisocial personality disorder is what's called gaslighting. And this has become kind of a buzzword recently. But this is when someone is trying to control someone else. And basically, you're trying to control their thoughts, and you're trying to control their memories. Remember, we talked about how memories can be manipulated and everything else? Narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, and psychopaths, both examples of antisocial personality disorder. They're going to try to manipulate others, abuse others, because make you doubt your own reality. That's not what you see. That's not what I said. You know, you're in that relationship, and the guy goes, no, I didn't cheat on you. No, I didn't do that. She didn't say that. And then you start to question yourself. You know, I didn't do that. You must be confused. You know, why are you being so dramatic? Why are you reacting that way? And what they do is they turn everything around and they make it your fault. Example, again, my wife was married. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my watch. I'm meeting a little bit. My wife was married before me, and she was married to a narcissistic psychopath. All right, that's what he was. And one of the things that he did was she kept a journal and she kept it on a computer. And what he would do is in the middle of the night, she caught him doing it once. He went down and changed the words in the computer, the words of her memories that she had to go to. Because again, with depression and your memory not being that good at certain things, she kind of needed that to remind her. He was actually doing it, saying you were just joking. I was just joking. You're the problem having that reaction because I was just joking. You twist things around. It's someone else's fault. You put the blame somewhere else. This is all called gaslighting. And this is a great tool for manipulation by the group of people who do this. signs that you're being gaslighted, all right there, being in an abusive relationship, someone telling you you're a liar, a lot of projection going on with this. So again, when we look at antisocial personality disorder, what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? Well, psychopath is usually genetic, no personal attachments, controlled behavior, highly manipulative behavior. These tend to be educated white-collar criminals. They calculate their risks. They find their victim. Little evidence of wrongdoing. They work out a scheme. They gain their trust, into their bank accounts, whatever, get them to invest in whatever, and they tell them, yeah, sure, you got a lot of money. Meanwhile, they're draining it all. These people are less likely to get caught because they cover up their tracks. I don't care that I'm screwing someone out of their money. They shouldn't have trusted me. That's their fault. You hear that a lot from the psychopath, sociopath. Well, that's their fault. That's their problem. The sociopath is usually environmental, erratic behavior, impulsive. It's the guy that you bump into and say, dude, you want to go? You want to go? Not thinking, hey, this guy just bumped into me. It's a little bit crowded. And is it, if I get a fight with this person, is it really worth me getting D-haul and everything? No, dude, you want to go? You want to go? You want to go? Very guy thing. But women do it as well. Non-calculating. You tend to leave a lot of clues, more likely to go to jail because you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking it through. 1% of the general population is a psychopath, 4% are sociopaths. And again, these are your repeated criminals. The guy who will get free from prison and then decide, oh, wait, I don't have any cash on me. So he goes and robs the Walmart. That's the sociopath. That's the person who's not thinking, I'm not going to get caught. I'm special. All those other things go along with it. So there are more stuff there on psychopaths and sociopaths. So how do you become that? Again, some of it could be biological. It's in your family, breed it down. Some of it could be social. You grew up in poverty. You never had anything. And that's unfair that I was born this way, so I'm not going to be fair to others. It could be psychological. You were promised things when you were a child and your family never came through with them. I got to work on my own. I got to get mine. We got kicked out of the house. So life is unfair, so I'm going to be unfair to life. So it could be one of these more than others or a combination play of all of them. All right. So and then here's some serial killers with psychopathic and sociopathic behavior. And then there's a difference. There's the psychopaths and there's the sociopaths that are serial killers here. And take a look at that. Take a look at some more stuff there on personality disorders. Look at that. Break that down. And just some more reading you can do there. Or you can do on the website if you like, and just other disorders there. Okay, so that should wrap up all disorders. Next, we will get into therapy.